tell you, it gets better and better on this show. It's unbelievable, and the people you meet, for one, like myself, I'm humbled, and I get to meet authors by introduction, and I've recently been introduced to this gentleman who has taken a lot of time to compile the Sports Finish Index. His name, Howard G. Peretz. He ranks the greatest buzzer beaters of all time. You know, we've all sat and looked at games in the past which changed on a dime, or the last pitch, or the final touchdown, and so many of them have been parts of our lives for years and years and years. And Howard has taken the time to actually categorize these and put these in a book called the Sports Finish Index. And Howard, it's Tony D'Angelo. Thanks so much for being with us today.
I'm delighted to be with you. Hi, Connecticut.
Yeah, it's actually, we have a, you know, I guess we're getting that same weather pattern you are, you know, decides every 5 minutes it wants to do something different. At the moment right now, the sun is shining. I'll walk out after the show and it's sure, you know, it's going to rain. Mark Twain was right. You don't like the weather in New England, you just sit around and wait a while and it's sure to change. But if I'm not mistaken, you were born in the Bronx and you've watched a whole lot of games over the years.
Yeah, I was born in the Bronx. I was a Yankee fan. I got spoiled very early because I grew up in the 40s. I expected to win every year. We fought among Pee Wee Reese, Rizzuto, and Alvin Dark, and Mays, Mandel, and Snyder, and Robinson, and Berra, and Campanella, and that was it. It was a great, great childhood. Went to a doubleheader with a bag of lunch, stayed out all day, and had a good time. And I remember the bleachers were $1.25 when I went.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And other than being an author, where did you spend your life's work?
Pardon me, you said again?
Yeah, other than being an author, where did you spend the brunt of your life's work? What did you do for a living, or what do you do for a living?
I became a toy guy and worked for Hasbro before they became Hasbro in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And I lived in New England for many years. Both my kids were born in Boston. I was in the toy business, and I got very excited by the licensing business, and was able to acquire the rights to the expression, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings." And I built a fat lady character who would kind of come down and save the sporting event at the last moment. And I wrote a book that did extremely well, and everybody asked the same thing: what are the greatest events that ever happened? What is number one? What is number two? What is number 20? And I had no idea. So, and I'm not a heavy stat guy, but I wanted, because I do believe that if you know a little bit about sports history, it makes you a better sports fan, that if I could somehow collect in one place the greatest finishes, so that every time you saw one of these things, you remembered where you were and what you were doing and who told you about it. And I put them in one book, and I made them very short to whet your appetite. And I went back to, you know, early history, but I had a lot of contemporary events, and I covered all team sports, that I would have the perfect sports book, because there isn't a bad page in the book.
You're right.
When the Yankees and Red Sox play, or UConn play Syracuse in the Big East tournament, or New England, the Giants play in the Super Bowl, or what have you, they're all great. I had 250 events. I should have only had 200, but I loved the last 15. I put them in the book anyway. I used to be afraid at night that maybe I missed an event. But I've been doing it for so long, and so many people have come to me with events like the 1939 Rose Bowl that I may have missed and stuff like that, that I have a really good list that stands up and is much more authoritative than all the other lists that are out there. And The book is really a very nice, small formatted book. It's fun to own, fun to keep, and fun to read, and the events are great.
Well, I'll tell you, in preparing for this interview, and kudos once again to our mutual friend Marty Appel, who sent some wonderful materials that I was reading, and I was pouring through the outline. And I was mentioning this to my friend Bob Lazzari. Bob and I do a sports show in northeastern Connecticut on Monday nights, and I've suggested that we have you on that. That will be a lot of fun. But it gravitated to me almost immediately, Howard, to the 1972 Olympic basketball game between the Soviet Union and the United States, and I saw you had it in your book. I took it, I watched the tapes, I watched the broadcasts, I watched the interviews. And Howard, not for nothing, I'm just as confused now as I was over 40 years ago when it first happened. And it's just an amazing conflagration of world politics, the Cold War, and sport all ending up, and ABC coverage all ending up into one. And I'm glad you had that there, but what were your impressions of that? I still don't get what happened to this day. Maybe you can explain that to me.
Well, you know what happened? We had never lost in Olympic basketball since the sport was invented in the Olympics for Berlin in 1936. So we were 63 in a row. 63 games in a row we had won. And we didn't really have a very good team because our best player, Bill Walton, decided not to play because he didn't want to try out. And we didn't have the right coach. We had an older, defensive-minded coach. And the Russians were considered to be the best semi-professional team in the world. They had outstanding talent. And we trailed the whole game very close. And then Doug Collins, who does the games for ESPN and was the Philadelphia 76 coach and coached Michael Jordan, 19 years old, came to the foul line with 3 seconds left, made both shots. They tried to inbound the ball, we deflected it out, and we ran off the field, and we won the game. Except for a bureaucrat for the Olympic Committee decided to put time back on the clock. It was his call. He didn't have to answer to anybody. We didn't really know what to do. A lot of people tell you we should have kept the team off the field and gone into and not showed up, but we went back on the field. The Russians threw a 3-quarter lane pass. They pushed off, and the Russians made the basket. We protested. It went to an Olympic committee that consisted of 5 people, 3 countries from the Soviet bloc, 2 from Western Europe. We lost 3-2. We never took the silver medal. We never appeared on the stand, and nobody gets that that's the number one event because it happened so long ago, and also because we lost the game. And also in that same event, of course, you had the Israeli athletes being killed. You had U.S. heavyweights that used to dominate. We lost to Cuban. The Russians won the 100-yard dash. They won the world's heaviest man. We got our butt kicked, and it was the Cold War, and it was a very, very bitter loss. I mean, real serious stuff. I mean, worse than the Yankees and the Red Sox. You know, worse than the Redskins and the Cowboys. It was just awful. And it's hard to believe that that event is 42 years old, and I would love young people to know about that event. The only way they're going to know about it is if I couple it with events that just happened the other day. And of course, we had the Red Sox last year in the divisional playoffs in the World Series. And so you can tie all these events together, and then I rate them by sport, and I rate them across the board. And you could really do a story about every event. I mean, that's how exciting they are.
Well, you know, and that's interesting. You have a point system in this book, and how does this work? You rate things.
Well, I didn't want to get too elaborate with points, but I wanted the events to determine where they belong as opposed to me sliding them in. So the most important aspect of an event is that something magical happens.
Mm-hmm.
A magical event happens as if you're going to say holy, and then you don't say the curse word, and you're there, and you can't believe it. I guess a hail flutie would be an example of a magical moment, but there are many, many, many. So that counts the most.
Now,
What counts is the last play outcome, because if the score happens 2 minutes left in the game, it's not a big deal. If it happens on the last play of the game, that's a big deal. And the third thing is the importance of the game. I mean, if it's in the postseason, if it's in the Super Bowl, if there are famous players, if there are top teams, that adds to the value of the event. And then the surrounding environment, which is the hype and the media coverage and stuff like that. That went into, example, the Harvard-Yale game, the greatest game in the history of the Ivy League.
yes.
Wound up being a tie, even though Harvard said they won 29-29. So that game is certainly in the book. And then the last variable is if it's a comeback or an upset. So if a team that's not supposed to win, like Appalachian State beats Michigan in the Big House, they get comeback points and they get upset points. And the scores pretty well lay themselves out, and then all I do is, put them into a box, and there I go.
You know, and you had actually called to mind for me something that I hadn't thought about for years, and I was, I think I was my senior year of high school, and I was watching the Canada-Russia Cup in 1972, where Paul Henderson, I believe, scored, it was the game-winning goal. I can't remember if it was the game-ending goal. But I remember, my father, who was not a hockey fan at all, my father followed some baseball. He liked watching baseball and listening to it. But, this whole thing was riveting. And I thought, because it was this, as you mentioned, it was this whole world dynamic then of the free world versus the Soviet bloc. But that, providing it meets your criteria, I might suggest that for a future work for you.
Well, that's really very, very true. I worked very hard to make this an inclusive list, so I have some of the finest female moments that are right up there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of soccer games. I have America's Cup. I got a WNBA. I got 2 College World Series. I got the Women's College Volleyball Game Finals. And most books on sports really are baseball books, football books, basketball books.
Right.
And my sense is that a sports fan loves sports, goes from one to the other, and may have a favorite. So in the book, there's a baseball section, there's a college football section, there's an NFL section. So you can read what you want, and then you can skim around and have fun. Can I tell people how to order the book?
You certainly can.
Yeah, the book is available on my website, which is called Sports Finish Index, SPORTS Finish, FINISH Index, INDEX.com, and it's just $17.95 plus $5.95 for shipping and handling, and I can get books out for Father's Day if that's the reason. Although I must say most of the people who are buying the book, and the book is just out, are very selfish and they want the book for themselves.
Just skimming through it was so much fun for me. What in your estimation, now I may know the answer to this, and you of course do, but what do you think is the greatest sports finish event in history, taking into account any team sport?
I didn't quite. You broke up just a little
Oh,
bit.
I'm sorry.
What sport?
Yeah, what was the greatest sports finish in history, regardless of the sport?
Well, the greatest finish of all is the Olympic basketball game. That is the number one event in my book.
Mm-hmm.
It scored a 96. There are no hundreds. and I'll just briefly, if I can, I'll give you the top 10.
Sure.
The second one is the Little Miracle on Coogan's Bluff. That's Bobby Thompson's home run in the one-game playoff in 1951. The third one is David Tyree's helmet catch against New England in the Super Bowl that just ended in '08. Number 4 was the Bill Mazeroski home run that ended the 1960 World Series, the first walk-off home run in Game 7 against the Yankees. Number 5 is Jimmy Valvano, when his team, North Carolina State, upset the Cougars in the NCAA championship game. Number 6 is the World Series Game 6, 2011, where the Cardinals came back and beat Texas when they were down to one strike twice. Number 7 is the statue left play, the famous play in the Fiesta Bowl where Boise State upset Oklahoma with 2 trick plays at the end. Number 8, which New Englanders will relate to, is the Ice Bowl in '67, when Bart Starr went in and scored as the Packers beat the Cowboys in the cold. And number 9 is Carrie Strug, the U.S. Olympian female, part of our great team, and we won the group gymnastics for the first time at the Atlanta Games in 1996. And number 10 is the greatest game ever played that I attended, which is the NFL Championship game in 1958, while I'm mad to this day when Johnny Unitas and the Colts came down and beat the Giants in Yankee Stadium 23-17. Those are the first 10. And many of these events, they have books written about them. They're so special.
Yeah, and you know, it's really something. In the past, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Bob Wolf, who did the radio on that 1958 game for Mutual, and it's amazing that so many of these events, of course, you never really know what's going to happen in an event until you're absolutely there, but he was like, shrug your shoulders, get in the car, I'm going to go down and cover the championship game, which was kind of the same sense that he had when Don Larson was going to pitch in the World Series that day as a surprise starter, and ended up calling 2 of the most pivotal baseball events and football events in history. And it's just, we don't anticipate, and I think it's the great part about these events, Howard, is that we don't anticipate them happening. We're not going to a park saying, or an arena or a football stadium, we're going to see something terrific today, but it just kind of springs upon us, and then it becomes legend, and then it's like, well, everybody knew, you think in happenstance, they were going to see this thing when it happened at the end. And who could have ever imagined Bobby Thompson's home run? That was, it's before my time, but that had to be entirely amazing if you were there.
Yeah, you can't really explain it. If you can't explain it, it's in the book. And when you see a full court pass go from one end to the other with no time left, and the guy turns around and he drops it in the basket, that's really special. You could throw it up to play 1,000 times, and Rick Pitino made a mistake because he didn't block the inbound pass, but it still was a beautifully executed play. And people talk about these events forever. And the nice thing about sports history is, I'm an older guy, I'm 75. I have a lot of young people that spend time with me, and the only reason they spend time with me is I know sports. So it's a language that allows people to communicate with each other, and it's a wonderful way, I believe, for young people to learn about American history, because sports history is really a very important part of American history, and these events are so very special. And when you talk to the players who played in the events, they really can't explain it. It just happened. So whether you believe in God or not, there's something magical that happens in these sporting events. There's some type of spiritual answer to what happens because it can't be explained. You know, when Carlton Fisk hits the foul pole and he's rooting for it against the Cincinnati Reds in '75 at Fenway Park, and the ball goes fair, I mean, that's an image that every Red Sox fan knows and will know forever and ever. And it just played out that way.
It really does become a part of the legend, and I, you know, in preparing for this, I was reading about Bobby Thompson, and he said that at one point somebody had approached him. They were listening, they were in a foxhole in Korea, and they were listening to the game, you know, just as he was coming to the plate, and then when he hit the home run, they were given an order, you know, do not commence firing until you get the signal. But the Giant fan in the foxhole just started getting incredibly excited, just started shooting his gun. I mean, it's like, you know, it's who would have known? It's just it's an amazing thing. It's unbelievable. We're coming up to the end of our interview, and Howard, I'm just so pleased to have you today. Once again, I would like for you to give your website information and where people could get this book. Believe me, I've been through it. It's a lot of fun. It'll keep you talking and thinking about all these fine events for, you know, days to come.
Okay, here it goes again. Available for Father's Day. It's sports with an S. SportsFinishIndex.com is the website. It's really simple to order. If you want the book autographed, you just go to the contact page. Tell me who you'd like the book autographed to, or tell me something about the fan. I'll be very glad to put it in the book. And I know you love the book, and I love doing it. And it's at a real good price, $17.95 plus shipping and handling. SportsFinishIndex.com.
And Howard,
thank you very much.
And thank you. We'll talk soon. Take care, my friend. Be well.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Howard Peretz, the Sports Finish Index, and we've really come the gamut today on Connecticut Morning. We started with sports, we ended with sports, and a lot of different things in between, but quite a show we've had. So we'll be back with our closing remarks very, very soon. Tony D'Angelo here on Connecticut Morning, May 27, 2014. Right back, right after this.